Chapter 13 Interstellar Space Station A2712. When Lux came to again, it took him a while to orient himself and understand where he was. He was still lying on the cold floor of Tavi's kitchen. She was kneeling beside him, staring at him in shock. Nausea turned his stomach. "How are you?" she asked, worried. She knew something wasn't right. She knew Lux had changed. She knew he had become more withdrawn and that it all had begun when he started his special training, but she couldn't explain his violent physical reaction. All Jared knew when he started this program was that the bands were meant to help them learn faster, to absorb more information in less time. Tavi, until now, knew nothing at all about the bands and their purpose. "Can you stand up?" she asked him. "I feel sick," he groaned, slowly pushing himself upright, bracing his weight on his arms. "Lie down in my bed," she said, helping him to his feet. "You can stay here tonight." Luke slowly shook his head. "I'd better go home." "In your condition you absolutely shouldn't be alone. You're extremely pale, and you're injured," she replied, gesturing toward his wrists. "It's fine, I sleep on the couch," she said. "If anyone is sleeping on the couch, it's me," Lux insisted. "Okay," Tavi said. Once Lux was lying on the sofa, covered with a wool blanket, Tavi brought him a glass of water and an old pot. "At least tomorrow's weekend," she said, placing the glass and the pot on the table beside him. He nodded. "Lux, you can't go on the mission if you feel like this. You need to talk to the authorities." Lux closed his eyes. Nausea rose in him again at the thought. But the moment his thoughts aligned with the mission, the nausea receded. So he focused on the idea of flying to the Bernard star system in a week, of being a hero, and he began to feel better. "I can't," he said quietly. How could he explain to Tavi that he was not allowed to talk about it, that he physically couldn't, that the iron bands enforced a form of brainwashing that prevented him from thinking or speaking differently, even if he wanted to? "I'm sorry I've changed." She went into the kitchen and returned with a small bag of bandages. Taking his left hand in hers, she examined the round wounds encircling his wrists. "What happened?" she asked softly. Lux continued to focus with all his strength on the mission and his role in it, trying to keep the nausea at bay and escape the pain. Inside, he searched for a solution without letting his thought linger too long on it. Tavi didn't speak anymore. She unpacked a bandage and gently dabbed ointment onto his wounds. He flinched, his face twisting in pain. Tavi paused for a moment, then continued. Her cool self soothed him. She wrapped his wrists in white bandages and secured them with small strips of tape. Then she took his other hand and carefully bandaged that one as well. A strand of her brown hair fell into her face, and Lux noticed how beautiful she was. Suddenly he no longer had to concentrate on not thinking the wrong things. His thoughts were entirely with her hands holding his. The nausea faded gently on its own, and so did the pain in his skull. In that moment he wasn't thinking at all. He didn't have to hold anything back. He didn't have to suppress anything. "If you can't speak, maybe you can write," Tavi said suddenly. A sharp pain drilled into Jared's head once more. He groaned, his eyebrows drawing together in agony. It might work, he thought, and despite the pain he nodded. She fetched a pen and a paper and held them out to Lux. He tried not to think about what he was writing, which was incredibly difficult, but if he allowed the thoughts only briefly and quickly replaced them with mission-compliant ones, the pain became a bit bearable. It was still unbearable, still nearly overwhelming, but at least it allowed him to stay conscious. With trembling hands, he reached into his pocket and placed the iron bands on the table. "Don't touch," he said. Then, groaning in pain, he wrote, "Brain-altering, iron bands, pain, brainwashing." After the last word, he lurched forward, clawed for the pot Tavi placed on the table, and emptied the contents of his stomach. Stars danced before his eyes, and he was on the verge of losing consciousness again. Tavi stroked his back and handed him the water, her gaze fixed on the iron bands and on his bandaged wrists. Anger surged within her. "I'm so sorry, Lux," she murmured. "We have to do something." Lux closed his eyes. He thought of obedience, of the mission, of the promising Bernard system. He imagined himself sitting proudly in the cockpit of the spaceship, celebrated as a hero. He pictured the Star of Enlightenment, the symbol of the space station, and his nausea slowly receded. He said nothing more. Tavi left the room with a sheet of paper Lux had written on. He would not fly to the Bernard star system. She would stop it, no matter what. The next morning, Tavi set out for the city archive. The building was ancient, towering over the city like a massive brown metal spire. Star cars could dock on multiple levels. She intended to search for reports on the iron bands, any clues about what they did and how they worked. As she stepped out on her star car and passed through the airlock into the archive, the smell of paper and old books filled her nose. Alongside the shelves were countless rooms lined only with computers, since most media was now accessed digitally. She sat down at one of the terminals, began her search, and was quickly pulled into a vortex of stories, reports, personal accounts, and conspiracy theories. She read that the iron bands had allegedly been used by authorities long before to manipulate people and render them obedient, that their wearers were no longer capable of thinking, let alone speaking, anything against the regime or its ideals. At first, users were still able to think thoughts that contradicted the regime, but only at the cost of severe pain. After a few weeks, sometimes even days, the wearers were no longer capable of thinking anything that opposed the regime's views at all. They were trained to suppress certain thoughts to escape the pain, until eventually those thoughts were pushed so far out of consciousness that they became inaccessible, as if they had never existed. The longer the wearers were exposed to the iron bands, the more of their own thoughts disappeared, suppressed so completely that they could never be reached again, as if no other thought had ever existed than the one implanted in them. Tavi read and read, her thoughts racing. So the special trainings were nothing more than a way to manipulate the mission guards, to erase their critical thinking and make them obedient. The pain Lux experienced came from his inner resistance. He hadn't refused to talk to her because he didn't want to, but because he simply couldn't. Strangely, the realization eased something inside her. When she returned to her apartment, Lux was gone. The pot stood clean in the kitchen. Beside it lay a note with the words, "Thank you," written on it. Tavi picked up the note and stared at the word for a long moment. Then she grabbed her bag and her keys, rushed back out of the door, climbed into her star car, and drove off. She stepped into the airlock of his building and hammered against the closed door. "Stefan, open the door!" After a moment she heard the lock click and the door swung inward. "What's going on?" Stefan asked, confused. "They're manipulating Lux with iron bands," Tavi said as she stepped inside. "We have to do something, otherwise we will lose him." She told Stefan everything. That Lux had come to her the night before, that he had collapsed, the message he has written, her research. "We have to get out of here," she finished. "We have to abort the mission with Lux and go to Earth, and we can't tell him. It would destroy him." Stefan looked at her seriously. "Who knows about this?" he asked. Tavi shrugged. "No one," she said. "But I think David would be in. And Lux, we have to take him with us, but he can't know anything. According to what I read, the first days or weeks without the iron bands will be extremely hard. It'll be painful for him to allow other thoughts, but after some time it gets easier. He still has a chance to become who he used to be. But we have to hurry." Stefan nodded. "Come with me," he said. They went down the narrow spiral staircase into his basement. Notes, papers, and pictures covered the walls. He had been planning this without telling her. Tavi stared around, mouth slightly open. "In 2 days it's Independence Day," he said. "That's the perfect moment. People will be distracted. The authorities will use the day to spread even more propaganda. We shouldn't wait any longer, and the timing is ideal. The institute will be closed, and everyone will be at the parades." Tavi thought for a moment, then nodded. "You can get into the institute with your access card. You could let us in through a different entrance." Lux cart will open the hangar for the spaceship. The ship will be fully stocked. Food, supplies, clothing. It was loaded for 22 people and 3 months, which means we'd be more than prepared. There's enough space for all of us. And with you, David and Lux, we have a solid knowledge base. Tavi stared at him, amazed by his understanding of the access system. Would you have gone through this without us? She asked, stunned by the precision of his plan. She didn't want to know the answer, and Stefan didn't respond. He simply kept talking. We should meet near the end of the main parade. It'll finish on the other side of the city, right where Alpha Centauri will rise when the parade arrives. It'll draw people away from us, and we won't run into too many others. Then you go inside. If anyone asks what you're doing here, just say you need something from your office. It's not unusual for employees to pick things up on their days off. We'll head to the rear entrance, where you can let us in with your card. It'll take some time for David to reprogram the coordinates. That'll be the most critical moment. David needs to do that beforehand, Tavi said thoughtfully. I have to get him inside earlier somehow, so he can program the coordinates in advance. That way we can launch immediately once we reach the spaceship. You are probably right, Stefan said, pulling a large sheet of paper from the wall. When Tavi realized what it was, her breath caught. Where did you get that? She asked. It was a floor plan of the ACEST. From a friend, Stefan said proudly. I've got a handful of people who'd come with us, too. But we need David and Lux. Go get the others. We only have 1 day left to prepare. Tavi nodded. We bring Lux in on the day of departure. He can't know anything beforehand. We can only pick him up when we're already on the way to the starship. I think you're the one who has to get him. He wouldn't come with me. He'd sense that something is wrong. But he trusts you. You have to be the one pick him up in 2 days. Yes, it was true. Her heart pounding, she climbed the spiral staircase and set off to find David.